Joining me today is Kyle Plantz, who's the political reporter at the New Hampshire Journal. Kyle, we've talked about politics all show. I want a chance to talk about the New Hampshire Journal.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about it. How do people read it? Where is it delivered? What is it?
We are actually strictly the only online media outlet here in New Hampshire because a lot of media outlets here still publish newspapers, whether they're dailies or weeklies, but we are strictly online, so no print publication. So you can find us online. Our website is nhjournal.com, very simple. And that's where you can really find all of the stories that I work on throughout the day on state house politics and even some national things that are impacting our state. So New Hampshire Journal is actually a publication of Inside Sources, and Inside Sources is based in Washington, D.C. And so we have a team of reporters down there that cover national politics and some D.C. Congress stuff, tech, finance, energy, politics in general, things like that. And so my publisher bought New Hampshire Journal just a couple of years ago, and then I was hired to really covered the state. And so I started in about August, right in the middle of the election, which was quite a good time to be here. Really enjoyable.
The best time to get to know politics is when people are getting elected?
Especially in New Hampshire, of places that people really thought that the presidential election could have been decided by our state. So that's what I do. And now I switched over to State House coverage and doing a lot of that stuff too.
And I guess the thing about it's a wonderful thing because we have the biggest state legislature in I think the world, maybe?
We're the third largest legislature in the English-speaking world, and only the U.S. Congress and the British Parliament are bigger than us.
Okay, so definitely the largest state. And that's got to be interesting. And the number of bills, the different type of bills.
Well, that was the point. That was the reason why, the point of New Hampshire Journal is to really be a different source of news for politics in the state, because you have all these other mainstream media outlets, WMUR, The Union Leader, Concord Monitor, all these great publications, and they have, a couple state house reporters covering, the same thing, the big stories, the big issues, voting rights and things like that. But we have 424 members in our legislature, and there are a ton of committee hearings and a ton of bills that don't necessarily receive the same coverage. And so that's where we really come in, is how do we find the stories that aren't necessarily being covered, write about them, and then also I put out a daily political newsletter that culminates all the different stories in the state. So what the Concord Monitor and Union Leader are reporting and things like that. So people, whether they are lawmakers, lobbyists, advocacy groups, residents that just want to know what's going on, they can subscribe to my email and they can check out all the stories and click on the ones that they're interested in of all the political happenings for that day.
What are the stories? So we've talked about the budget, we've talked about education issues, we've talked about voting rights.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the opioid crisis.
Yeah, it's a big one.
What are the other stories that you think people ought to be paying attention to that are big stories, but also, maybe more importantly, what are the other stories that people ought to be paying to that will never hit the radar of the major press?
Yeah, no, so that's kind of where I've been trying to figure out where that kind of happens. And so I definitely have covered whether it's a committee hearing that's a very interesting bill that's happening. So for example, one story that I wrote was on a bill that actually is now going to be in front of Governor Sununu's desks and whether or not he's going to sign it. And that was whether or not parents should receive 2 weeks advance notice of any sexual education material that will be in front of their kids. And this has come up in the legislature before and received a little coverage, but I recognize that this was a really interesting and unique bill. And so I spoke with the bill sponsor, and I was able to talk to some people for it and against it, and I really covered that from the beginning. And then it actually started to pick up steam and passed in the House and in the Senate, and now it's sitting in front of the Governor Sununu's desk. And so he said he's inclined to sign it, but he just kind of is figuring out exactly what he'll do with it. But that was a story that was not necessarily kind of happening, the big story of the time right then and there, but is now something that has actually come into fruition.
We got about 20 seconds left. What's one other thing we should pay attention for the balance of the year?
Northern Pass is really big right now. They just started the trial process for that yesterday, so keep an eye on that. And then we already have some people already throwing their names into the race for 2018 gubernatorial election and even for the U.S. House elections too. So definitely stay in tune for that.
Okay, so as we get closer to the fall, we'll definitely have you back for the overview of who's running for what. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, John.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and 981 corridors and how it impacts your life in our region. If you've got an idea for a future show or a comment, why don't you send me an email? But whatever you do, join us at this same time next week for another edition of Capital Connections.